Now this scope's got a range of 400 yards, and this whip's got a range of... Hello, my name is Adam Winrich, and this video is about the #1, very best, greatest of all time, everyone must own Target whip. Actually, that's just the clickbaity title. What I'm going to do is give you my general thoughts about Target whips. So first, a general definition of Target whip when someone's talking about them. What they usually mean is a bull whip somewhere between 6 foot and 8 foot long, with a handle that's longer than 12 inches and usually a slimmer diameter, somewhere between 18 to 20 millimeters at the handle. So that's a general definition of a Target whip. However, any whip can be a Target whip. Cue the montage.
4-foot bullwhip, 30-foot bullwhip, Australian stock whip, snake whip, signal whip, Florida cow whip, bullock whip, Hungarian whip, Swiss whip, German whip, Indonesian whip.
So that montage literally included whips from around the world. And the point I'm making is any whip can be a Target whip. The most important thing is to find something that is comfortable for you, that you can crack easily, and if it's comfortable for you, you can probably control where it goes. That's the most important thing. Now, I do have a couple anecdotes about Target whips I would like to share. First one goes like this. Now, you need that longer handle on the bullwhip because that's like the longer barrel on a rifle. The longer barrel on a rifle, the more direction it gives to the bullet. The longer the handle on a whip, the more direction it gives to the whip. Now, if that were really true, the bullock whip would be the most accurate whip in the world. And another anecdote I'd like to give comes from Gordy Peer. Gordy has been a Wild West performer for decades, long time. And Gordy told me about one show he did where after the show, a kid came up and said, "Hey, if you give me your whip and you hold out a cigarette, I bet I could cut 5 pieces off of that cigarette and still leave a bit sticking in your hand." So Gordy agreed and handed the kid the whip and held out a cigarette, and sure enough, that kid cut off 5 pieces and left a bit sticking in his hand. And Gordy told me that really all that kid had to practice with was like a length of belt with a cracker tied onto the end. So that really goes to show you can do good targeting with just about anything. But if you do want some more focus, here is Adam Crack's 3 suggestions for buying a whip for targeting. #1, it'd be a 7-foot bull whip. If you're going to go with a bull whip, the 7-foot length is all around a really great length for both targeting and multiple cracking. Or you can go with a stock whip, again that longer handle like the longer barrel on a rifle. And this is a 6-foot stock whip, and this is actually the standard for targeting in Australia. They actually measure the whips before their targeting competitions to make sure everyone is using a 6-foot whip. This one's really accurate. And third option is a performance hybrid whip. This one comes from G.O.A.T whips, and this is a 5-foot performance hybrid whip, and I just prefer that length better than something longer than 6 foot. But really, you can get any length you want. These are my suggestions. It all comes down to getting something you're comfortable with and something that cracks easily for you. Now, let me give you some tips on how to get started with targeting. Now, there are so many different targeting tricks you can do with a whip. I'm not even going to try to scratch the surface. I'm just going to give you one thing that I like to do to practice targeting, and that's seeing how many pieces I can cut off a bundle of spaghetti. I think it's a really good exercise, and it may sound easy, but it's surprisingly challenging. So I'm going to first get my distance to make sure I'm like not too close, not too far away. Because what I want to have happen is have the cracker hit the pasta. If I hit it with the body of the whip, it's going to slap the whole thing down, and then there's only cutting off one piece off the bunch of spaghetti. And I'm really going to try hard not to hit the target stand. To try to pretend that this might be a real person holding a target, and you don't want to hit him. So, got my distance, start on the outside, work my way in. There, I hit too much with the fall. That's got to back up a little bit. Try the other one. There's a little piece left, but it's better to leave a little piece sticking in there than to get cocky and risk hitting the target stand. I know earlier in the video I said every whip is a target whip. However, there's one trick that I do a lot of that does require kind of a specialized whip, and that's cutting soda cans in half. So the whip I have here is a little bit heavier than the average stock whip. You can also use a cow whip or a bull whip or a whip made out of chain, whatever you want. The main thing, it just helps if it's a little bit heavier. This one has some lead loading in it. And then the other thing I like to do with can cutting whips is I'll put a longer cracker on them. This cracker is made out of Dyneema bowstring. It's got some knots in it. And I find really what it helps with is it protects the rest of the whip. So if my distance isn't quite right, I'm not slamming the fall or the body of the whip against the can. And I've had a few people tell me, that can just like busts open because he shook it up and it had a lot of pressure in it. So to answer those guys who may or may not see this video, I've taken this Coke can and actually opened it and just filled it with water to let people know the pressure is not what gets the can cut in half. And there you go, that was a pretty good can cut. Well, that's my video about targeting with whips. Again, to recap, I'd like to stick by my saying that every whip can be a target whip. Unless you're cutting cans in half. Then you need something special. But let's go with just whatever's comfortable for you can be good for targeting. And something else I'd like to say, for those of you that want loud whips, I've done a lot of experimentation with this, and what really makes a difference is where you crack the whip. If you want a really loud whip, go crack it in a racquetball court, then it's going to be super loud. Anyway, well, thanks for watching my video, and I'd like to add, I do have a Patreon, so if you'd like to support my content here on YouTube, I'm going to put a link to my Patreon in the description. If you can throw in $1 or $2 a month, whatever, I'd sure appreciate it. Okay, my name is Adam Winrich. Thanks for watching. Now, do I try to crack the whip this way, or do I turn it around and crack it this way? I should have gone with the laser sight.